Welcome to the Battlefield Show. I'm your host, Sage Goodwin, and as always, I'm joined by Sammy Boy. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
Doing wonderful today. Ready to talk some Battlefield and Call of Duty. Oh my gosh. As well as a surprise topic that I want to... Even Sammy doesn't know what I've got cooking for this
we just literally seconds ago before we started recording, Sage just dropped this on me that he's not going to tell me the topic. And now I'm really excited for this.
Hopefully it lives up to it.
I just know you well enough that when you're going to keep something a secret from me, it's going to be juicy.
Let's hope it lives up to that hype, but let's jump in the podcast. I mean, there's nowhere that you can go in the gaming community right now that isn't talking about Call of Duty. Yeah, I know, surprising, right? It's you thought I was gonna say God of War, right? Mm-hmm. Especially when on a Battlefield podcast. You've been playing a bunch of it. I've been watching a bunch of gameplay because, like we've talked about before, usually it's gonna be waiting until Warzone comes when I buy the game. But it seems to be like pretty well received across the board, depending on who you ask.
Yeah, COD at this point is in a weird state. I kind of also agree. It's a pretty good game, but I don't like it. So,
oh no?
No, it's so hard to explain. I don't dislike it. I have a mad love-hate relationship with it. It's like there's so many things that really, really annoy me, but I still want to play it. I'm not like, I'm not playing it. I'm still playing every day. I literally was just playing just before we started recording. So
it's like, like one of the, I don't know if they have these in Australia, but like in the arcades, they've got that little, in America, it's the bear or like ape, I think it is, where it's got like the electric shock game.
Oh,
yes. It's got the little, like two little pylons that you hold on to, and it's like, you see how long you can hold.
Yeah.
Like, it hurts, but you also want to keep on doing it.
That's actually a great comparison. It's it's a very hard game to explain. I've done a couple videos on it, and I haven't really like captured how I feel about the game, because there's a lot of really, really good stuff that is up there with some of the best stuff in a shooter that I've ever played. And then there's also a lot of stuff that makes it genuinely feel like in 2 weeks I'm going to be uninstalling it. Like it's such a mix. So there's probably quite a bit to talk about today.
Okay, so from the outside and like my experience with the beta, I really enjoyed it. I had a fun time to the point where I was like, man, do I really spend that much money? But then I remember God of War Ragnarok comes out this week or next week. And then I was like, oh, yeah, now I remember why I paused for a little bit.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, $70 for a game. How do you feel about that? Like, this is like the next generation. We've had, games were $40 and then they raised to $60. And it seems like this is the next iteration where it does go to like $70 for next gen games if you're on PlayStation. Like Xbox doesn't really do this. But PlayStation, especially like with Call of Duty making it next gen and making it $70. How do you feel about that?
It's a hard one because like it's very easy for me to just, as a creator, I just go, oh, that's just what the game costs, and I just buy it. Like, to be honest, if these games cost, I don't know, $300 or $400, I'd probably still buy them just because that's what they cost, and that's what I just enjoy playing them, and I'm going to make money off the game anyway. So it's kind of hard for me to judge. I kind of see it from both sides of, on the fan side, it's like, like everything's just getting so much more expensive, and just like the general cost of living these days, like it's a lot of people are doing it tough after like COVID and everything. So I do understand it's like it comes across the wrong way when we've just been through a pandemic, and then these guys are all like, also we're charging you an extra $10 for the game now. It's like, man. And then on the flip side of it, it's like when you compare a game in 2022 compared to a game in say 2010, they are just so much better than they used to be. And so, in a way, we are paying for for what it's worth. In fact, it's cheaper than you look at like the difference in those games compared to the difference in price, we're actually kind of getting a bargain in a way, because they've improved more than twice since then, but we're not paying twice as much. So
yeah.
it's a hard one to, I don't know, it's a hard thing to gauge, because I do see it from the business perspective too, where they're like, I'm sure all of these studios too, they probably hire way more people than they used to. It's such a bigger like production than it used to be, so it also probably costs them more. So they're only just trying to make their money back, and I do get it, but it's also I'm kind of just genuinely on the fence, because I really don't disagree with either side. It's like people who feel they don't want to pay it, I completely get that, and then the companies who are just trying to make their money, like I also get that as well.
It's such a barrier of entry for sure to we're in a unique situation to where we could buy it, make content, make money off of that content, and then continue. Like we could build back our investment on that, and then you look into the side of things where it's like from like if I was just a fan, obviously love Call of Duty, want to play the new game, but it also makes you kind of think of like, at least me personally, because I've got Battlefield over here. I'm working through a bunch of other games, and it's like, okay, do I pay the money for this? Do I not? Do I wait for Warzone, which is what I'll probably end up doing, is waiting for Warzone, and then still buying Modern Warfare, knowing my track record. But it does look like a fun game, and it's doing incredibly well. One of the best launches, actually the best launch on Steam that Call of Duty has. Obviously, it's a little muddy when you take that into account, because Call of Duty hasn't been on Steam that long, but the last few games have been, and in comparison to those games, it is doing very well. And it seems to be doing quite well on PlayStation as well.
Yeah, I also heard a really good argument that I hadn't even really considered, that if you took Modern Warfare 3, which came out in, I want to say 2013, no, 2011, I can't remember, but it was like early 2010s. If you took that, what it made in its first, weekend or whatever, and adjusted for inflation, it's actually made more than this. So it's kind of hard to gauge. But for me, it looks like this is, I actually said it before the game even came out, I think this is the most hyped Call of Duty I can ever remember. And that says a lot, because there was a lot of especially Modern Warfare 2, like the original, that after Modern Warfare, that game was so good. And then Modern Warfare 2 got announced, and I just remember there was just so much hype. But I think purely because, just the general play base has grown, the gaming's just more mainstream now. So they're probably like even in terms of the hype, but it's simply just there's more people hyped now because there's just more people playing games. So yeah, it's definitely doing very well. It's like all over the place. I can't go anywhere without seeing it. It's made, I think
I was in a fancy steakhouse.
Yeah.
And I saw at the bar Call of Duty ads.
What the hell? It's so random. That's a weird thing with COD though. It's the only game, like in Australia, we don't really get that. Every now and then, depends on like what you're watching, I guess. But on like free to air TV, like obviously if you're watching like a streaming service that has some sort of ads or whatever, like that's different. But just on our like local TV, you never see video game ads. But I've seen for the last like 5 years, every time there's a new COD launching, you always see COD on like free to air TV.
You never see video games until it's COD.
Yeah. So it just shows how big it is that like they are, like my parents they have probably never played a video game. They know they just know the name Call of Duty. Like everyone just knows that. So it was always going to do well, and it's probably, to be honest, probably done better than I actually thought it would, which is pretty crazy to say.
Yeah, which I mean, it just shows the impact that the series has on gaming as a whole, honestly. Like, it's just insane to think about. Now with, like, all of this background and stuff, like, how do you feel, like, going in between Battlefield 2042 and Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2? Like, what is that like, going in between these two very similar but very different games when it comes down to it?
This might be a really hot take. It might be a really hot take. I think 2042 is the better game. I really do. Granted, it's had a year to get there, so that has to be accounted for. But to counter that counterpoint, Call of Duty does not improve. That the launch state of COD is always just that is how good it will get. Maybe this one will be different because it's got a 2-year cycle because they're not releasing one next year. So maybe they will like really dig in on this one, but I just don't think they will because there's going to be Warzone. Warzone will get all of their attention, and this has happened pretty much since Warzone like became popular. The mainline games have kind of suffered, unfortunately, which for me couldn't care less actually. But the people who just want to play Modern Warfare 2, unfortunately, will probably suffer a little bit because they do focus a lot on Warzone because that's where their money's at. So I don't think this game will improve by even 1% in the next 2 years. I genuinely don't think it will. Outside of like there'll be little bugs and stuff, but they're not gonna. You look at what Battlefield's done in terms of even just like we haven't seen it yet, but they're changing back to like some sort of class system and stuff.
Yeah.
They really do listen. That's something that is such a stark contrast between Infinity Ward or Treyarch, whoever's making the game, and DICE, is that the Call of Duty developers are so stubborn. Like they make the game they want. They do not care what you want. They just make what they want to make. People complain. They go like, "Oh, we don't like this part of it. We don't like that part of it," and they just say, "Oh, to be honest, I don't care. This is what the game is. We're just sticking to it." And that has pros of they obviously know how to make games. So if they just do what they know how to do, it's going to be a decent game. But then on the flip side, there's often a lot of stuff that is like genuinely bad, and they just don't listen. Whereas DICE have shown, not just from this game, but in like pretty much every game, they often kind of launch pretty rough, but they really do listen. They like look at even just the map redesigns. I've never seen a game do that before. They know that what we said is legitimate. I think early they're always a little bit stubborn with stuff. They're kind of like, oh
yeah, you guys don't like this? Come on,
yeah,
try
like,
a little bit more.
The first couple of months, it always does feel like that. They're a bit like hesitant, but I think they eventually always go, okay, they're still saying it. Like we're gonna look into it, and they do change it. And so, yeah, that's the thing is that although Battlefield's had a year to get where it is, to where I think it personally is a better game, that just sounds mental to me to even say. Like, it's actually wild. Because the other thing is, Modern Warfare 2 isn't bad. I just still think 2042 is a better game. But even though it took a year to get there, I don't even think that matters. Because this is the final state of Modern Warfare 2. Outside of, like, they'll add content, but they're not going to fix, the key issues like skill-based matchmaking, all those sorts of things that people really dislike. They will never ever remove that.
Or honestly, probably, I mean, there's the auto aim or aim assist thing that everyone is always complaining about with every game. Yeah. But that's something that they probably won't change. Yeah. And then another thing to almost kind of like just kind of give you some backup here. Shroud, the streaming personality, one of the best gamers in the world, he also agrees with you that says Battlefield 2042 is better than Call of Duty.
Damn, did he say that? I did not see that.
He did.
That makes me feel very, because I thought I was going to be like seen as the crazy guy for saying that. That makes me feel like very confident because he's the type of dude, he knows games. Like he's been streaming for years. He plays like 10 hours a day. Like if anyone knows stuff, it's the guys like that play so much. Yeah. And he literally is like one of the best players. Like he used to be a pro. I can't remember. I think it was CS:GO, but he used to be a pro player and stuff. So if he says that, it makes me feel, it doesn't mean it's necessarily true because it's just an opinion, but the fact that it's not just me, it makes it feel a little bit better. Because
and someone when I look at it,
it's like, exactly. When I look at it, it's like, if you ask me now why it's better, I don't actually know if I can answer that. I don't know why. It's just that when I play 2042, I have fun. I don't really have fun playing Modern Warfare 2. And I haven't on any COD for years. It's like the skill-based matchmaking, the time to kill is like insanely fast. It's like essentially hardcore in Battlefield. Like it's just ridiculous. There's just a lot of stuff that, like I said, one, they'll never fix it, and two, it's like such an issue that even though 90% of the game is like really, really good, that small 10% probably equates for like 80% of your enjoyment. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a like I said, it's a weird game. I don't think I want to say the game's bad because I don't think it's bad. It's got a lot of really good stuff, but it's just like the experience you get from playing it isn't that good. I don't know how else to explain it.
Well, it's a different kind of like, it's a different experience. It's like, let's see, what is the way to kind of equate this? It's kind of like going to visit family versus going to visit somewhere you want to go. Like, that sounds super weird.
No,
but it's
I
like,
feel that in my bones.
You know, like you enjoy it after it's done, but like the whole lead up to it, it's like, oh, okay, I gotta go see family. I could be going to like Disney World, Star Wars Land, but I'm gonna go see family. It's not a bad experience.
Yeah, and you get along with them all and stuff, but you still, while you're there, probably thinking like, I'd rather be doing something else still. Like, I know that's actually a pretty good. I've been trying to really like think about because I just don't know how to explain it, and that's probably the closest I've heard to how I feel. It's just it's a weird sensation. It's like a good game that I very much don't like is really the only way to explain it.
Put that on the box. A good game that I don't really like, Sammy boy.
And then even that's like hard to, because I say I don't like it. If I don't like it, I just wouldn't play it. I'm still playing it, so it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's got enough good stuff that it gets you kind of like hooked, and then it also has so much stuff that I think what it is for me is that I played so much COD. Yeah. I've been playing for like 15 years that I'm almost like, right now I'm having fun with it, but I'm in my own head, I'm like preemptively disliking it because I know in a month I'll be sick of it. So even though I'm not sick of it now, I think I'm like, preemptively sick of the game, which doesn't make sense because I can only judge it off the first week. And the first week, for the most part, I had a bit of fun with it, but I just know there's enough stuff, like the skill-based matchmaking in a couple of weeks will just get unbearable. It borderline is already. It's just the rest of the game's like new enough that I'm having fun with it, and then there's just a lot of those issues that are not immediately game breaking, but they will be in a while.
Yeah. So, a question for you, and it's probably a dumb question, but why is skill-based matchmaking such a big deal?
It's a good question because it's probably one of the most divisive topics I've seen in gaming in general. For me, it's so the counter argument that I always hear, because like when you speak out against skill-based matchmaking, the people always come back at you like, oh, you just want it to be easy. You just want to play against bad players. You're having a cry that you can't be as good as you used to. And while part of that's true, everyone wants to be good at the game they play. So of course I want to dominate. Like, who doesn't? If you play a game, you're not trying to do bad. You know what I mean? So that's part of it. But for me, it's the lack of variety. I load into a game and I just know I'm going to have a 1 KD at the end of it. There's no like...
Yeah.
When I load into Battlefield, this is why I love Battlefield. I don't know what is going to happen. And I've played it, especially like with 2042, even with its issues. You load into a game and you don't know if, maybe there's going to be a whole team, like a whole massive squad on the other team, and they're just going to demolish you. Maybe you're going to be the one doing the demolishing. Maybe there's going to be some crazy moments where, I don't know, just crazy stuff happens. And I think that's part of the enjoyment, is the variety, and you just don't know what's going to happen. Whereas with COD, every time I click play, I'm not hopeful for, this might be the game I do really well, because I'm just not going to. I'm against everyone who's exactly the same skill as me, which is fair. I don't have an issue. I'm not like saying it's unfair, because that's the fairest way to do it. Everyone's equal skill. But what was fun about COD back in the day, and what's still fun about Battlefield and any shooter that doesn't have it, is just that you load into a game and you just don't know what's going to happen. You would have those games where you would just annihilate the other team and you would go like 40-1 and it was the best feeling ever.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd also get games where you get absolutely annihilated. And like that's not fun, but you also learn from that. That's how you get better. I was terrible when I started playing COD. Like genuinely, I was like a 0.4 KD.
I know for a fact that the reason I got better at games was the brief time that I played Call of Duty. Like it is that, like it's going through like, you're getting refined by fire because of how just constant you are back and forth into the meat grinder.
Yeah, and so while I do get why they put skill-based matchmaking in there, because at the end of the day, no one wants to get like demolished every game. So I do get that the new players who have just picked up the game, a lot of these kids might be like 13. You don't want to throw them in there with a bunch of like 25-year-old sweats and they're just going to get smashed every game. But in saying that, that's where I started. I got absolutely flogged every game, and that's how I got better. So now I'm good at the game, not because I got my hand held through it, because I got thrown in and they just said, I don't care if you do well. You bought the game. I couldn't care less what happens. And then I enjoyed it enough that I was still getting smashed every game, but then you would just have that one game because of the random lobbies. There was no... I think that's the other thing, is that people think you're guaranteed to do bad because you're new, so everyone's better than you. But you will still have games where you somehow might be the best player in that lobby because it's random. And so that one game every 5 games and you do really well, that's the one where you go, oh, okay, like I'm getting smashed every other game, but that was really fun. I want to get better at the game. So for me, that's why it's an issue, is just because there is no variety. It's just I've essentially experienced everything this game has to offer like it's a week old now, as of today. I've experienced everything. Yeah. Literally everything. So with Battlefield, I still haven't experienced, like 2042's been out nearly a year, and every time I load into a game, I'm still... Every now and then you see something you've never seen before. You see people do a render zook and you're like, what the hell? What was that? Like, that's the part that makes, like, and that's the thing with multiplayer gaming. Single player games is great for the story and you kind of just play it once and then you're done. Look, we were talking about God of War. I'm going to be buying that next week and I'll play it one time. I might play it again in a couple of years, but like, I start it, I finish it, and I'll uninstall it. With multiplayer gaming, that's the entire opposite reason that people enjoy it, because you can play it essentially forever. Like, look at, say, Battlefront 2. If that was still getting support, I'm pretty sure both of us would still be playing it 5 years later. Oh, yeah. And so that is the part that people enjoy about multiplayer games, is the replayability. And COD just doesn't have replayability. Like, it's just, it's gone, because every single game, they are essentially, they've got an algorithm that puts you in lobbies where they are trying their absolute hardest to get every single person in that lobby to have a 1 KD. That's the whole point. They're not... There's no randomness to where... And this is the crazy part, actually. This sounds like a tinfoil hat theory, but it's been proven to be true. Every about roughly 10 games, they actually do put you in a bot lobby so that you do pop off and you go, oh, that game was fun. And you get that addicted feeling. So, like, they have literally built an algorithm that pretty much means for 9 games in a row, you're going to just be in lobbies with everyone who's on your exact skill level. Then you'll get thrown, they'll chuck you a bone and you get one good game. That keeps you addicted, but then you go back to the same thing. So it's like, I'm not actually playing a game. I'm, like, the game is playing me. It's an algorithm. I'm literally just... doing what they want me to do. So that, anyway, it's I could go on for ages, but essentially the crux of the issue with it is that there is no replayability. It's just, there's no variety between each game. And the other thing is that you can't just like casually play it. I can't just jump on and be like, I might just, I've got an hour to kill, might put some music on and play. You have to sweat. You have to genuinely sit there with your head like a millimeter from the monitor, sweating just to get a 1 KD, not to go well, just to get a 1 KD. So, yeah, I could go on for ages, but that's the main issue that I have with it, and that's what most people have the issue with. It's not I don't think people are complaining about like, oh, I just want to dominate. Like, obviously we want
Mm-hmm.
to every now and then, but it's not about that. It's like, I just don't want every game to be identical to the last one. Is the main
Yeah.
issue.
It's interesting because I think from like like looking at it from a blog post or a thought piece article or someone on Twitter. I mean, you look at kind of like the definition of skill based matchmaking, and it's like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then you look at it in like how they implement it, and it does take away from some of the gameplay. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. To a certain point, it's much better if you're just getting into it because then you're paired up against people that are your level and it makes a lot more sense. But once you get to the like, by the time that most people would get to that point, I mean, most people that play Call of Duty, most people have already played a previous Call of Duty, and it just seems like it's a weird decision to go that route.
Yeah.
Now, going to the Battlefield side of things, I think it's so fascinating that we're having this discussion a year on from Battlefield 2042's launch, and we're having this deep kind of like breakdown of Call of Duty versus Battlefield. And it's like, okay, that doesn't necessarily make sense, but I think these are the most similar games that we've had of the series so far. And it's interesting to look at the differences when they are so similar.
Yeah,
And
it's a very unique situation because I don't think any of us, when Battlefield launched and we knew Modern Warfare 2 was coming out after the success of Modern Warfare 2019, I don't think any of us thought we would be having this conversation.
yeah, exactly. What are we saying here? Yeah. It is just very surprising to me that we're having this discussion and we're like deepening what we can expect to see and what we are currently seeing with something like Battlefield. I think this is really good for us as players because we're seeing a deeper comparison to these two game series, and like there's a lot. I mean, there's a reason Call of Duty is so popular. It's because it's good, and there are so many different pieces to that make it great. And I think one of the things I definitely want to kind of speak on is how are you enjoying the maps in Call of Duty versus Battlefield? So I think that's where the real strength of something like Call of Duty is.
Well, for me, the maps are terrible.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they have been. I have not really enjoyed. Not all of them. There's a couple that are okay, but I essentially haven't enjoyed the map design in COD for about 5+ years. They're all, especially with the Modern Warfare ones, they're very geared towards like super campy playstyles. They've got like the doors that they never used to have. It was always just like an open doorway. Now you can shut the door behind you and sit there looking at the door. They're very, yeah, it's very hard to explain, and I think most people in the COD community kind of agree that, yeah, the map design has been one of the biggest downfalls of recent CODs. They're not all terrible, but most of the, I think, like, so there's 8 maps in this game, and I think there's one that I think is like an actual good map. There's one that I think is not terrible, and the other 6 are genuinely some of the worst maps I've ever played. And that's going off, like, the last CODs I've said the same thing. So
Yeah.
it's not like it's just like out of nowhere. They've just lost. I don't know. I think it might be a type of situation that Battlefield has gone through where a lot of people who worked at these companies in their prime for the franchise are no longer there. Maybe, I'm not really sure. We haven't heard anything, but like, yeah, it just feels like the map design in the old games was like some of the best. Like, they flowed so well. They had this like system where every map was kind of like a 3-lane system. So you had the center of the map where, just talking about domination, for example, the B flag was always pretty much in the center of the map. You had the spawns at each end, and then the A and C flags were like closer to those spawns. And then you had the flanks on the side that were a secondary lane on each side of the center area, which usually crossed over, and it always like connected really well at the middle. So it gave you the opportunity to like flank behind, enemies, and it was just, I don't know, they just flowed really well. Everyone was driven towards the center of the map, but you could play a little bit sneaky sometimes and get behind, and that's when you get like your big multi-kills and stuff. These days, there's no, like, I don't know how to explain it. There's no flow to the maps, though. There's just, like, they are actually very similar to the 2042 maps, not in terms of, like, size and all that, but they are just there. There's no, I don't know, there's no, like, it feels like there's no thought put into them. Like, the 2042 maps, they would, like we've said, they just felt like they just got, like, the terrain. They just made a random terrain, and then they're just like, what can we put here?
Yeah.
Let's put something there. That's kind of how the maps feel in this game a bit. There's no, I don't know, no intentions behind why they have designed it in that way, for example. And that used to be their biggest strength, was that every area of the map that you were running through, you could tell why they put that there. There was little flanks. There was like
Well, that was what just surprised me so much.
Yeah,
was like for forever, Call of Duty has been really good with its level of like map design and it's just flow of what the maps are, just because it's so much more like close knit. I saw a report that this was like they were playing again around with some of the biggest maps in Call of Duty. Is this true?
Yeah,
and is that the reason why these games suck so much?
Part of it is like there's some maps that suck just because they are big. Like there's some maps in this game that it's like, it's been out a week and I'm already just clicking off. I'm like, nah, I'm not playing that map. But also some of the smaller maps, they still suck too. So it's not just because they're big.
Okay.
But I do think even more so than Battlefield, in Call of Duty, big maps are just not good. I don't think we've really ever had. Trying to think back to like the old CODs, I don't think we've ever had maps that were seen as bigger and they were a favorite. They've never.
Yeah.
Every game back then used to always kind of have one that was like randomly just bigger. Everyone was like, "Why is that?" So it's like twice the size of the rest.
Let's try a big one this time.
Yeah, it's like that. It actually felt like that's what they were doing. They're like, let's just, I don't know, just do a test and see if we can make a good big map. And they always sucked. And it's not even necessarily to do with the map design on those ones either. It's more just that COD is known for that really fast-paced, like, chaotic gameplay. So when, like, in Battlefield, I think we're a bit more used to, like, running through your area. It might take you a minute to get there. In COD, that feels really bad. Like, if you have to run really far to get to where you need to, it's so annoying, because I think the other part of it is the time to kill is so quick that you'll often run for, like, a minute, get there, and just be essentially one-shot killed, and then you've got to do it again. In Battlefield, I think because of the spawn, you can spawn on squad mates, and time to kill is a bit slower to where if you get shot at, you do have a chance to, like, survive that. I think that's why Battlefield can do bigger maps a bit better. And obviously, obviously just the player count, but that's not... Yeah, we've seen with with this game, with 2042, that bigger doesn't necessarily mean better.
Yes.
Yeah, I think just... I don't know what it is with the COD maps, but I think they've just really have just lost... I don't know, it also could be intentional, because, like, the whole skill-based matchmaking thing, for example, they've even said in the trailers for this game, they're trying to build the game for every playstyle. So they've even... They referred to them as sentinels, right? They don't want to call people campers. They refer to campers as sentinels.
I love that so much. Like I've said before, in Call of Duty, I am a sentinel. I love this term so much.
It is. I actually don't mind. Like it's kind of become a bit of a roast in the community, but I don't actually mind it. It was pretty smart by them to not.
I didn't know about this, but I love this so much.
Yeah. And so I think that's like why the maps aren't as good as they used to, because I think, so like back in the day, in prime Call of Duty days, there was that golden era, which was, I think, Modern Warfare 2, Black Ops 1, Modern Warfare 3, Black Ops 2. Those 4 years in a row, they were just like unmatched. There's like the best multiplayer gaming era that we've ever had. And for some reason, I don't know whether it was the map design or just how people played. I don't know why, but back then, every now and then you would see a camper, but like maybe that was just they're just new to the game or whatever. Like there was not many people who had a camping playstyle.
Yeah.
So everyone was just running around, and that's what made COD fun, was that, like, you don't run around a corner and someone's waiting for you. And that's so frustrating. Every now and then it's fine, but, like, every death, it's just like, come on, man, just stop camping. Like, it gets so frustrating. And so, because also the maps were designed to be that way, there wasn't that many spots to camp in those maps as well. Whereas now, because they are... And again, I get it. I'm not even, like, really having a go at them. Like, I understand trying to build your maps so that everyone can have fun. But it's kind of that, like, you know, the jack of all trades, master of none saying, like, that is kind of what the maps are, because they don't really do anything well. They're not good for aggressive playstyles, and they're not even that good for camping either. They're just, like, kind of not good in every area. So
Yeah.
I do think that's a part of why the maps aren't as good, because they are trying to... It's very clear they've tried to transition this game from a super, like, just arcadey arena shooter. That's what it always was. They've gone a little bit more realistic, a little bit slower, a little bit more tactical. Not drastically. It's not Rainbow Six Siege, but it's enough that you can definitely tell the difference. And I think that's a lot of the reason why the maps just aren't good, because they're not designed with the same intentions they used to, because their intended playstyle for the player base isn't what it used to be. Which the fact I just said that as a sentence is ridiculous. Their intended playstyle, like, they shouldn't be dictating how people play. Like, let people play your game how they want to.
Yeah.
Which is why it was good in the first place, because everyone just ran around having fun. And it's kind of like with Battlefield. It's just like that sandbox. You just jump in. Dice aren't, like, forcing people. In fact, they did the opposite with this one. They're now just like, use whatever guns
they
you
went
want.
the wrong direction, really. They're like, do whatever. We don't care.
Yeah.
Honestly, we don't even care about what the maps are like. We just made them so you could have somewhere for your character to be. Do whatever. We don't care.
Yeah. And
then Call of Duty is like, no, you have to play this way, or you won't have fun.
And isn't it ironic that when both of these games were at their peak, they were in the middle ground, both of them. They were in that middle section. And now they've both veered to each side of it. And I won't say Call of Duty's failing, because it's just had its essentially best launch ever. But I think, like, the player base feels the game is failing. Like, not all, because a lot of the players are very casual. So most people who play, like 90% of the players, do not even understand that we are having these conversations. There's that many people who don't even know that, like, there's gaming on YouTube. Like, that's most people are just so oblivious to it, because that's, you know, they just go to work.
That's Call of Duty's appeal, is like,
exactly.
It becomes so popular because its main player base, outside of, like, the fringe stuff, like the people that watch YouTube, which is honestly huge just because of, like, how big Call of Duty is. But, like, a large part of Call of Duty is I go to work, I go home, I turn on my Xbox, and I play Call of Duty.
Yeah. And so that right there is why I do understand their approach with a lot of the stuff. Like, I don't know, I very much disagree with the skill-based matchmaking stuff, but I also do get it. I'm not, like, just oblivious. I'm not, like, sitting here like, oh, why are they doing that? I understand why they do it, but it's more just the way that they have handled it. And I think, I don't know, I just think that they could do a much better job of not, because they're almost alienating their loyal players by essentially saying, we do not care, like, you've bought this game 15 years in a row, but we do not care about you. We just care about the new players, because they're the new generation that they're going to give us their money. Even though you guys are going to give us money too, we just don't care. If you don't enjoy the game, I don't care. I'm making it for casuals. And that's the part that I think the loyal fan base feel a bit frustrated with the game, because it feels like they're essentially just not listening to the people who built the franchise, because we are the ones who have been playing for 15 years, that the game doesn't exist to this level without all of us having stuck in there and played it for so many years and had so much fun with it. So, it's definitely just a very like, the whole topic is just frustrating, but
it's almost like they're in a transitionary period, like Battlefield 2042. They have an idea of where they want to go, but they want to attract more people to the franchise, which I think is a fair want, and it's going to be how business wise it continues to grow. But I think maybe next, again, because I mean, there's multiple studios, they have different goals, and maybe this is the type in the cycle where they have, okay, this is the game for everyone, and then the next game is going to be the super hardcore fan one. The one after that's going to be the middle ground, and then we're going to be attracting more people again. I mean, we just keep on going in this wash, rinse, repeat cycle. But it's very interesting. But now going from that. Surprise topic here, and I think this may be just as controversial, if not more controversial, depending on how our statements are taken by people. Battlefield 2042. This is a topic from Zanu in the Discord, and it started a lot of fun discussion, and it was brought around from Call of Duty as well, so I wanted to pair the two topics together. Call of Duty has a mode with third person. I want your opinion, and this is a Kevin. Also, Total PS was talking about wanting a third-person mode. Third-person in Battlefield. What do you think, man?
I would love it. I would be a little bit skeptical if it, like Kevin said, where he kind of talked about a whole game. But even then, I don't think I would be against that. I'd be a bit like skeptical. But if it was just a mode, for example, like in COD, it's just like a separate playlist. I would think that would be great. Unfortunately, I think it would need to be when they sort of rebuild the franchise, because I don't think there'd be enough people that would play it, to be honest. But
yeah,
I would be down for it because I weirdly enough always really disliked third person. Not so much in single player games, but in shooters. Always really disliked it, and then I played Battlefront, and now I love it. So before that, because in Battlefront 2015, that was the one that really, I won't say introduced. I had played some in the past, but I'd never fallen in love with them.
Yeah, because it isn't a very popular thing.
Yeah, and in that game, I actually used to still switch to first person mode, even though I knew there was the disadvantage because you don't get to peek around corners and stuff. I still played in first person most of my time in 2015, and then in Battlefront 2, I essentially never played first person. So that was when it sort of changed for me, and I'd be very down for it. I think it could be. I don't know. I think could be cool. I also I'm all for it, but I also don't. Oh, this is going to sound so dumb. I don't really want it, but I'd be happy to get it if that makes it. I'm not sitting here going I hope the next one is. For example, I'm not desperate for it. But if they came out and said it, I would be so okay with that. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So I love third person shooters very much, and Battlefront 2015. I was 100% third-person mode. Battlefront 2, 100% third-person mode. I really enjoy that kind of structure. It's fun. Resident Evil Village, they got an update that added third-person mode. I bought that, and I'm replaying that game in third-person. Really enjoy it. It's a fun, different kind of experience, and I understand people's qualms with it, and I understand... it's corner peeking. That'd be awful in Battlefield. No, I don't want that. Totally understand that. I want corner peeking. I love it very much. So
for me, it's never. I have never in Battlefront 2 been annoyed at it. It sounds bad when people use it as an argument. It's I can't really argue against it. It sounds bad. I don't want.
It's true. That is an advantage, but also you can partake of that advantage just as much as everybody else can.
Exactly. You can do it yourself, and then 2, I don't feel I ever really in Battlefront 2. I don't feel like I ever got killed over and over again because people were corner picking. I think when you have those I feel like those sorts of games. Even look at it with Fortnite and stuff. I feel like
that's a very good kind of
and that's I didn't
carryover.
even mean it in that way actually, but that's a good point. That's a very competitive game, and that has it. So that's kind of what I mean. But with third person games, they feel a bit more people tend to play them. Maybe it's just the games that I've played. I don't know, but I feel like people tend to play them more aggressively and like just run around having fun. So I don't think that. Yeah, I don't think that corner peeking is really an issue. Because in Battlefront 2, I just never. I actually cannot remember. I played over 3,000 hours of that game, and I can't remember ever like being annoyed that that guy was corner peeking me. And like, I did it. Oh, it's part of the game. I did it all the time.
Oh yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
It helps a ton.
Yeah.
Question for you: does it fit Battlefield? Because I mean, Battlefront 2 or Battlefront as a franchise has always been third person. It makes sense. That's why the DICE made it third person, because the original ones were, and it was such a core part of. Obviously, both of the original games, they had first person modes, but they sucked. But Battlefront 2015 and Battlefront 2 both had really good first-person modes. I mean, Battlefront, you weren't gaining any amount of advantage going to first-person on your aim because of how Battlefront 2015 handled that. Like, there wasn't any of that side of things with Battlefront 2015. But in Battlefront 2, there was more of an advantage if you wanted to have a greater level of control over your aiming if you went to first-person mode. So there is that level of advantage going from first-person to third-person and vice versa. So and it was such an easy way to like transition. You could go from third-person, peek around the corner, go to first-person if you wanted to do that. There was a little bit of a delay. But my question for you is, does it fit Battlefield as a franchise? Could it work very well? Because I think it may struggle with the immersion part. And I think that's a key part of what Battlefield is.
Yeah. That, for me, so when I said, like, I don't really want it, that's the part where it's like, I don't know if that feels like Battlefield. That's another thing where it would be like, for example, if that was the whole game, if it's just a mode, then I think that removes any, like, who cares? If it's just a game mode, like, no one cares. But if the whole game was just third person, I think that's another situation where it would feel too far from Battlefield, that kind of like 2042, where it doesn't make it a bad game, but it's like, kind of feels like we're not playing the same game, if that makes sense. So I think with Battlefront, the reason it worked really well is because it's Star Wars. That's the extent of it. Like, you're playing as a stormtrooper, you kind of want to see your stormtrooper skin and stuff, and you're playing as Darth Vader. Like, that's part of the reason they forced, like, as a hero, you don't have the first person option. Part of that is because, like, if I'm playing as Darth Vader, I want to see Darth Vader. I don't want to just be looking. To be fair, it would be cool to look through like his helmet and stuff, but I think that was why that worked so well, and it was why it made immediate sense. Even if the originals didn't have it, for example, and then they brought it in 2015, I don't think people would have been like, that's weird. I think people would have just been like, oh, that's cool. Like, we get to see our characters. Whereas in Battlefield, I don't know if there's the same draw to that.
Yeah.
Where because I personally don't really care to see my character, if that makes sense. I don't care about, especially the specialists. I just don't really care about the specialists that much. And then even if they went back to if it was just cool looking classes like the old games, even that, I just don't really.
See, that's what made me really interested to discuss this topic was, I think as Battlefield as a whole, third person doesn't really fit the kind of vibe that they're going with that ultimate immersion. But with the introduction of specialists, especially with said specialist abilities with like Sundance, and you could use their ability and you are in third person.
Yeah.
That's
a good point.
They're playing around with it. The executions are all third person as well, those animations.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point.
I could totally see them. It may have been something that they were playing around with Battlefield 2042, but decided against it. But they're like, hey, we've already got it, so let's use it in these kinds of things. That's my kind of 2 cents on it. Like, and it'd be very interesting to see, and I think it could be possible that the next game is that level if Battlefield 2042 went well. Like, if it launched well, I could totally see the next iteration of that be third person.
Yeah.
But
I think a thing with it that would work really well is if it was a spin-off. If they did essentially like a little hardline type game.
Yeah.
I think that I would be completely
Or maybe the
fine with
campaign?
Yeah, like something like that. Because I do think that even though I don't really care for the specialists, I will say that a lot of the specialist skins are really, really good. And it would be
Mm-hmm.
cool to be able to see them. That was the coolest part about getting hero skins in Battlefront, was like
Yeah.
loading into your first game and you just bought the new skin and you want to get that hero. Like, that was so fun. And then you load in as that hero and it just, everyone would, like, you'd see people like looking at you like, oh, they got the new skin, and you would stand there like emoting, and it was just like
Mm-hmm. It
fun. It
was
was
so
just a fun
freaking cool.
experience, yeah, just seeing your new skin and everything. And then it would last for like a month where it would still feel so new because you're actually seeing it. Whereas in 2042 now, I bought a lot of skin, or I say a lot, probably like 5 or 6 skins since launch, and I don't see them. You know what I mean? I don't. I've bought that new McKay skin that has like the embers coming off it, and it looks absolutely sick, and I don't see it because
Yeah.
I just play in first person. So I think
Mm-hmm.
it definitely has positives, and with the special, I think if the specialist thing was received really well, and let's just say we all love it, like, you know, everyone has a favorite specialist, and it was like an actual, I think how they intended it to go. If it went that way, I think it definitely could have been really enticing to do that for the next game, but I'm not sure. It just depends whether they stick with specialists, which I guess like they kind of feel like they're
They're
gonna.
definitely going
Yeah,
to. I
I
don't
don't
see a
know.
universe that they don't stick with specialists.
Yeah, even if they're just like, even if they just do a Call of Duty and they're just skins, like the operators in COD, they have no abilities. They're just, you're just choosing a skin essentially. They may even just do that, and I think we will still have like, assuming the next game will be, you know, in a similar time period. I don't really know, but let's just say it was
Mm-hmm.
literally called 2043. I imagine like we'll see McKay again, we'll see Falk, we'll see these characters again. Whether they play different from each other, I'm not sure, but because I do think they got so much flack for the specialist system that I also, it's a weird situation. I can't see them
Yeah.
removing specialists, and I would find it so absurd if they don't go back to a class system in the next game. Like,
Yeah.
that's like it's almost like the first thing that I just know they're not going to make that mistake again, surely. But then
Mm-hmm.
also, yeah, I can't see them removing specialists, so it's a weird one. But
Yeah.
I do. That is a very good point about like the, you know, Sundance. You know, when you use the wingsuit, that is third person. All the executions are third person, so they
Mm-hmm.
could have definitely toyed with it. And you know, Kevin said it. It's not like some random said it. This is Kevin who works at Dice. Like maybe they did try out some stuff like that, and maybe that's where
Yeah.
he you know he's got his idea from. So it's definitely an interesting topic.
Oh my gosh! Battlefield confirmed third person mode. Ah. I mean, I would like to see it. I think I would actually love to see a third person mode in Battlefield. I think it could work in a mode itself, and that would be fun.
Mm.
Something. I mean, there was, I think it was jetpack cargo, where you were played as one of the supports, and you were third person all because you couldn't play first person as like those support classes or like they weren't, were they specialists?
They were, what were they called? Enforcers? No, that was a actual class. Like there was a class.
Yeah,
Reinforcements. That was it.
reinforcements, there we go.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't do first person as a reinforcement or a hero, so that was a completely third person mode. The thing that I find very interesting that they would have to do, because you can't just pop third person into something, you have to design for it. And I
Mm.
think it would have to be limited to a mode that was designed for third person, because you have to take you almost have to have like a closer knit mode or a closer knit map to be able to fully take advantage of that. You need a lot of corners. You can't have open space, otherwise it doesn't really make
Yeah.
sense, unless that is your goal, is to not fully utilize it. But at that point, why even put it in
Yeah.
if you're not really going to take advantage of it?
Yeah, I agree. It's got to be. That was the good part about Battlefront, was that there weren't really any maps. I guess Geonosis, when they first added that, was pretty open, but that's just like the planet. That's not even them. They tried their best to make it have, valleys
Yeah.
and stuff, but that's just a desert planet. But most of the other maps, like, they were all very close quarters type of maps, and I think that's why that worked really well. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think it would work that well currently in 2042, purely because of, I think, like, on Stranded, all the conversation we've been having, I'm just picturing running around on Stranded in third
Yeah.
person, and I think that would work, but I don't think any of the other maps would really work. So that's the other thing you would have to, like, yeah, it'd be a whole other level of design to make that work, which is why I think in a mode itself, where maybe in that mode the maps are a bit smaller and, a bit closer quarters and stuff, it could definitely work. But a whole game, I do think that's kind of why I'm saying I don't necessarily want it. I'd be all for it, but I think it could potentially cause more issues than it solves, if that makes sense. So I'm just more like, I'd be skeptical of it, I think. But I would also be I think that would be so cool to actually see third person in Battlefield. Like, that just sounds so. I saw Kevin's tweet the other day and I was like, man, that sounds pretty cool. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's a very tough one, because I don't really have. After all that talking, I don't really have an opinion on it. I'm essentially just fence sitting again. I'm just like, yeah, I want it, but also don't want it.
Yeah.
But I do think it would be. I think it would just be awesome to see. It's one of those things where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
you kind of want them to do it just so we can experience it, and if it doesn't work, just don't put it in the next game or something.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And like, again, I think too we could look at it from a limited time only mode. I could totally see
Yeah.
something like that, to where they utilize Portal, or I mean, I want to see more of the limited time only modes with things that, like, you couldn't do in Portal. I want
that would
that
be cool in Portal
very
to have
much.
third person. That could be the perfect place to introduce that. Third person
And-
Portal. Just have it a switch.
Yeah.
You can just switch it on if you want. You can just make your server, and you can have that. That's like the perfect way to introduce it. Because then, if it sucks, that's not their fault. It's more like, well, just don't put it on. Like, you are in control of that. So if you're making a server and it sucks, simply turn it off. Like, so I think that would be a cool way to see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that would be good, and it ties into the idea that Portal is a remix of old Battlefield games. Like, that's the whole thing of when they launched it. They had you, like, cycling through all of the different modes and combinations that you can have in those previous Battlefield experiences. So I could totally see that being a really good carryover of, yeah, okay, we won't necessarily do it in the full game, but I think it totally makes sense if we did it in Portal. I think that would be a good carryover.
Yeah, and that would just be another thing that would, like, kind of add to Portal, that I think we all feel it's still slightly missing enough enticement. It's like an awesome mode, but it's not. I don't know. It doesn't have enough that I'm like, I just want to go and play it all the time. Whereas if they had stuff like that third person mode, and like the ability to do stuff like making a battle royale, or just having like wild levels of control, which, that, to be fair,
Make it
they
a
do have that.
forge instead
Yeah.
of a...
Oh, dude, yes, that would be like stuff like that. That and the third person, if they put that in there, I don't think I would actually play All Out Warfare. I think I'd just go make my own maps and do like, that is the level of stuff where Portal would be arguably the best Battlefield game ever on its own. Take away All Out Warfare, like, no one would even care about that. So that'd be cool to see. That would be very cool to see them introduce that. And it's kind of the downside of this game launching, Paulie, is that we probably just won't see that. I don't know. I don't know if Portal will. Like, do you think we'll see Portal in the next game? I'm not really sure.
I would love to see it. I hope it becomes. I would hope it became a staple with how many people really enjoy it, and there's still a strong community around it. I would love to see it continued, but from what they've said, and like how Ripple Effect is working on a new experience inside of Battlefield for the next game in that press release, I doubt it. Unless DICE takes it over, which is possible, because it seems like that's a big part of Battlefield 2042 as a whole. They continue mentioning it. They continue, like, bringing it up. And unlike Hazard Zone, which just got, like, canned, they are still doing stuff and supporting Portal.
It's so
which
funny that I just kind of forgot Hazard's own existence.
right.
They legit just like a month in just were like, sorry, that we're not supporting that anymore.
Thanos snap, and we
Yeah.
lost Hazard
It's
Zone.
actually pretty like it's just so funny that you bring that up, and I actually was like, oh yeah, that was the thing.
Yeah. So like, I mean, it's doing something good because it's still there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if it wasn't doing well, they would have nuked that as well. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So I could totally see it being added as like a mainline experience. Maybe it's just part of Battlefield as a future. Like that's what it is.
yeah. But I'm kind of the same. I hope that because it will suck. Like it sucks when you play the next iteration of a game and it's missing like one of the biggest things from the last game, and you're kind of like, oh man, that was like the best part. Now it kind of makes the next game feel like a downgrade because you're like, oh, we don't have that part of it now. So in that sense, I hope it's there. But then I'm not sure they will, and also I kind of just want the next one to just nail all the like fundamentals. I kind of just actually want like give me a pretty basic Battlefield with a campaign. And just make a game that's like Battlefield 3 and 4. Doesn't have to be that good, but just nail those like key aspects.
Yeah.
And just show us that you can make like just make it feel like a Battlefield game, and then from there earn our trust back, and then the next one after that you can start to try and like push it again. That's so for me it's like if they leave Portal out, it probably saves them a lot of work that they can put into making sure the base game is good. So I kind of
but then you can't leverage all of the weapons and stuff that they have towards your ultimate weapon count.
Yeah, that's the thing. It brings so much to the game. Like I think this game would be even more of a bust if it didn't have Portal. Because
I mean, Portal has more content than the main game does.
Yeah, it's arguably it is the main game when you think about it like that, because it does have everything, and then All Out Warfare doesn't have everything. It doesn't have all those weapons. It doesn't have, or I guess now it does have all the maps too, but like, yeah, it's almost weird that isn't the main game. Because it's actually bigger. Like it is the biggest part of the game, but it's like secondary. It's just a weird dynamic.
Because it's not real. I really want Portal to be in the next game, just so that we have another chance of Battlefield 1 content being in the next game. That's the only reason I want it in there, because as they've shown, they aren't bringing new content really to Portal, and I really want new content. Yeah,
and that's the other thing too with not having it, is that a lot of the content we are getting currently in All Out Warfare is just Portal weapons. So if they don't have that in the next game, they don't have that like get out of jail free card where they can go, oh, by the way, we're going to put all those in All Out Warfare. Because for me, that's a really good change, but it is easier to do. So it's like, if they don't have that in the next one, it's like, oh no, what are they better launch with bloody 40 weapons or else they're in trouble.
Yeah, and I think, too, what we're forgetting is Ripple Effect is the studio that was behind Portal. DICE only focused on All Out Warfare, and it was so under-featured and so little content.
That's the part that just makes me nervous. If they had to do it all,
if it's not there, what is this next game going to be like?
Yeah. So it's a very nervous couple of years. I think It's just like massive anxiety towards the franchise. Like I think we all know it can. A lot of people were saying like when this game was a bust, it's like, oh, this franchise is dead. It's not even remotely dead. I think there's still so much potential. But it's like, and we know that it can reach that, and it could be as good as it has ever been, but also the next game could also suck. And not knowing, that is the one thing about Call of Duty that, like, as much as I just said before, it annoys me because every game is the same as the last one. You know, when you buy a Call of Duty, you know what you're getting. There's no, the difference between a good COD and a bad COD is like 10%. The difference between a good Battlefield and a bad Battlefield is like 80%. It's like a whole different game.
High valleys and low, or high mountains and very low valleys.
So it's, I just wish they would get to that point, and not in terms of making the same game every year, because that's the part about COD that I've just kind of, it's just like not as fun because it's just I've played it so many times. I don't want them to do that, but I want them to get to the point where it's just kind of stable and you just know when you're buying a Battlefield game, it's going to be pretty good. It might not be as good as the last one. It might not be the best that we've played, but it will be like an 8 out of 10 at worst. And right now, I don't think anyone can comfortably be like, yeah, I think the next one's definitely going to be good. Like, I'm hopeful. I'm really hopeful because I think they've got the right people in place, but I don't know, man. I don't know what's going to happen.
I probably shouldn't be saying this, but it can't get worse than Battlefield 2042, right?
Someone clip that. Clip that and set a reminder for like, I don't know, 3 years from now, and we'll see. We'll see what is happening in 2024 or 2025.
It got worse! No! Yeah. I'm very interested to see how it goes, and I think it's fun seeing Call of Duty and Battlefield go head to head. I mean, it's great for all of us, for sure.
Yeah, it's always this is a fun time of year because this conversation always comes up. It's always, as much as I partly get sick of it, like the comparisons, like, oh man, just like, it's kind of like the console wars type thing where it's like, oh, just let it go. Like, who cares? But it is also fun to talk about because I don't know. I very much enjoy both franchises, and so I think the reason I like it is I can't really lose because I'm not on one side or the other. I just like I almost like start fights and then just leave it, and I'm like I'm just happy. I don't really care what the consensus is. If one game sucks and the other one's good, well, I still play the the good one anyway, so it doesn't matter.
You like to throw a grenade into a locked room and see what happens.
Yeah, it's definitely always a fun, especially like, unfortunately, well, I say unfortunately, it's a good thing. Unfortunately, my own community, like in my Discord and stuff, they're all very similar to me, and they're all maybe in their like early to even like late 20s. I think my community's mostly got a pretty level head, so like there's not that many arguments about it. I have to like go to Twitter and like just actually search like the comparisons to find it these days because my community's too nice, unfortunately. Everyone kind of just says the same as me. They're like, yeah, I just like both games. That'll do for me.
Yeah, exactly. And it's fun. As someone like, I mean, I have all of the consoles, and so it's so funny. Yeah. I mean, that's a very key, like, the console wars. It's like, it doesn't really matter.
Nah.
And I don't care either way. Them being competitive with each other just means better games are going to come out.
Yeah, exactly.
Which means I get to play better games.
Yeah, on both consoles. So it's a win-win.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the exact same. And I'm also the same with the argument too. I could not care any less about console wars. I have both. I don't care. I've always liked both. But I will also start the argument sometimes to just because people get so. It's actually funny to watch how attached people get to one or the other. It's like people defend like Xbox or PlayStation with their entire life, and I'm just like, mate, it's just a piece of equipment.
Just a
like
box.
It's not a sentient being. It's not gonna thank you for sticking up for it or something.
Thank you for sticking by my side and calling people very bad names.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think with that, thank you all so much for listening to this episode of The Battlefield Show. Greatly appreciate all of your support. If you'd like to support us completely free, subscribe completely free wherever you find podcasts on the YouTube channel. And make sure you hit the notification so you find out whenever we upload new videos and new episodes of the podcast. As always, thank you, Ethan Clark, for the beautiful thumbnail. All of you for listening, and we'll see you on the battlefield.